Emma sat quietly in Dr. Wilson's office, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The morning sun streamed through the window, but she felt cold inside at 52. She had been managing her diabetes and heart condition for 10 years. Her daily routine was simple. 7 different medications, 3 times a day. Every day, the white walls of the doctor's office seemed to close in round her as she waited. She had been coming to this same room for so long that she knew every detail. The painting of a peaceful lake hung on the wall behind Dr. Wilson's desk. Sometimes she would stare at it and wonder what it would feel like to sit by water that calm. But those were just dreams. People like her didn't travel to peaceful lakes. Dr. Wilson entered the room with a gentle smile. He had been her doctor for 8 years, and she trusted him completely. He always spoke to her with kindness, never making her feel like just another patient with problems. "Emma," Dr. Wilson said gently, settling into his chair, "I have something wonderful to share with you. Your daughter called me yesterday." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "Is everything okay? Is Sarah hurt?" No. Dr. Wilson laughed softly. "Quite the opposite. She wanted to make sure you would be healthy enough to travel. She's getting married in Ireland next month." Emma's face went pale. The wedding invitation had arrived 3 weeks ago, and she had been avoiding thinking about it. She had tucked it away in her kitchen drawer, next to her pill organizer. Every time she saw it, her chest would tighten with worry. Your daughter's wedding invitation came at the perfect time. "The trip to Ireland will be wonderful for you," Dr. Wilson continued. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Her hands began to shake slightly, and she pressed them together harder. "Doctor, I can't travel. What if I forget my pills? What if they get lost? What if something happens to me so far from home?" The questions tumbled out of her mouth like water from a broken dam. She had been holding these fears inside for so long. Every time someone mentioned travel, or vacations, or even just visiting family in the next town, the same worries would flood her mind. What if my blood sugar drops on the plane? What if I can't find a doctor who speaks English? What if the airport security takes away my medications? What if my heart acts up and I'm thousands of miles from you? Dr. Wilson listened patiently to every fear. He had seen this many times before. Good people who had let their medical conditions become walls instead of just facts to manage. He leaned forward with a warm smile. "Emma, your conditions don't have to be a prison. Let me teach you something new. In 2025, traveling with medications is safer and easier than ever before." Emma looked up, hope flickering in her tired eyes. "Really? Really?" He nodded. "The world has changed, Emma. There are new systems, new technologies, new ways to keep you safe while you live your life. Your medications don't have to keep you locked away." Emma wiped her eyes with a tissue. "But what if something goes wrong? What if something goes right?" Dr. Wilson asked gently. "What if you dance at your daughter's wedding? What if you see the green hills of Ireland? What if you discover that you're stronger than you think?" For a moment, Emma was quiet. She thought about Sarah's voice on the phone last week, trying to hide her disappointment when Emma had said she probably couldn't make the trip. "Your daughter needs you there," Dr. Wilson continued, "and you deserve to see the world beyond these walls." Emma looked round the familiar office. The same white walls, the same peaceful lake painting, the same chair where she had sat for so many appointments. Suddenly, it didn't feel safe anymore. It felt small. "I've been so scared for so long," she whispered. "Fear is normal," Dr. Wilson said, "but fear shouldn't make all your decisions. You're not just a person with diabetes and heart problems. You're a mother. You're a woman with dreams. You're someone who deserves to live fully. Emma felt something shift inside her chest. It wasn't the familiar tightness of anxiety. It was something different. Something that felt like hope. Would you really help me learn how to travel safely? Not just me. Dr. Wilson smiled. There's a whole community of people who travel with medical conditions. They meet every Tuesday at the community center. They've been where you are now for the first time in years. Emma felt a small spark of possibility. Maybe, just maybe, she could find the courage to try. My little girl is getting married, she said softly. Yes, she is, and her mother should be there to see it. Emma nodded. Feeling braver than she had in a decade, Emma stood outside the community center for 10 minutes before finding the courage to walk inside. Her hands were sweating, and her heart was beating fast. She had never joined a group before. What if they judged her? What if she said something wrong? What if they thought her fears were silly? The building was old but welcoming. The smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen, and she could hear gentle voices coming from a room down the hall. A sign on the door read Travelers with Health Conditions. Support Group. Emma took a deep breath and knocked softly. Come in. Called a warm voice. Emma pushed open the door and saw a circle of chairs. About 8 people sat around the room, all holding coffee cups and smiling at her. They looked like ordinary people, not the kind of brave adventurers she had imagined. There was an elderly man with kind eyes, a woman about her own age wearing a business suit, and a young man who looked like he could be her son. Welcome, Emma, said Margaret. A cheerful woman in her 60s with silver hair and bright blue eyes. I'm so glad you came. Dr. Wilson told me you might visit us. Emma felt her cheeks turn red. I'm not sure I belong here. I don't travel. I've never really traveled. That's exactly why you belong here. Margaret laughed gently. Every person in this room started exactly where you are now. Please, sit wherever you feel comfortable. Emma chose a chair next to her window. The late afternoon sun made the room feel warm and safe. She noticed that several people had small bags beside their chairs, probably containing the medications that had brought them all together. We were just sharing our stories. Margaret continued. This is James. James was a man in his 40s with a friendly smile. I've been to 12 countries with my medications, he said simply. The key is preparation and knowing your rights. Emma stared at him in amazement. 12 countries, started with just one. James nodded. My first trip was to see my brother in Scotland. I was terrified. Now I help other people plan their first trips. Round the circle, Emma learned about Peter, who managed his heart medication while visiting his grandchildren in Canada. His wife had passed away 2 years ago, and traveling to see family had given him purpose again. The first time I packed my pills for a flight, I cried. Peter admitted. I thought I was too old, too sick, too scared. But my grandson's graduation was more important than my fear. Lucy was a businesswoman who had learned to pack her anxiety medication for work trips. I used to turn down promotions because they required travel. She explained. I thought my panic attacks made me weak. Now I give presentations in different cities every month. Emma listened as they shared their stories. They talked about things she had never heard of. Digital prescription copies that lived on their P. Homes, special travel cases that kept medications cool even in hot weather, and how airport security actually helped travelers with medical needs instead of creating problems. The airport workers are trained to help us, James explained. They know that people travel with medications. They want to keep us safe. I was so scared the first time, Lucy admitted, her voice becoming soft. I thought everyone would stare at me. I thought I would be a burden. But now I help other people learn these skills. Fear kept me home for 5 years. I wish I had started sooner. Emma felt tears in her eyes. But they were different tears than the ones she had cried in Dr. Wilson's office. These were tears of recognition. She wasn't alone. My daughter is getting married in Ireland, Emma said quietly. I want to be there, but I take 7 different medications every day. I'm scared something will happen to me so far from home. Margaret reached over and squeezed Emma's hand. Ireland is a beautiful place for a wedding, and Irish doctors are excellent. You won't be alone there. We can teach you everything you need to know. Peter added, step by step. No pressure. Emma looked round the circle. These people understood her fears because they had lived them. They had felt the same worry, the same sense of being trapped by their own health needs. But somehow, they had found a way through. These aren't just tips about packing pills, Emma realized out loud. These are stories of people who found freedom. Exactly. Margaret smiled. Your medications don't have to be your prison bars. They can just be part of your travel checklist. For the first time in years, Emma felt like she had found her people. Maybe she could learn to be brave like them. Emma's kitchen table looked like a pharmacy. Pill bottles stood in neat rows, each one carefully labeled with clear tape. Prescription papers were spread across the wooden surface, along with a small notebook where she had written everything down in her careful handwriting. She had been working for 3 hours, but she didn't feel tired. For the first time in months, she felt like she was doing something important. She carefully organized her medications, following the system Margaret had taught her at the support group. Each pill bottle had a clear label with both the medicine name and her doctor's information. Margaret had shown her how to write everything, in simple words that any doctor could understand. Even if they had never seen her before, the diabetes medication went in one section, the heart pills in another, and the blood pressure medicine in a third group. Emma had never thought about organizing them this way before. At home, she just kept them all in a basket by the kitchen sink. But for travel, everything needed to be perfect. Her son David watched from the doorway, holding a cup of tea. He had been quiet all morning, and Emma could tell he was worried. David had always been the careful one. Even as a child, he worried about everything. Would it rain? Would the car break down? Would his mother be safe? Mom, are you sure about this trip? David asked, his voice gentle but concerned. Emma looked up from her work, and David was surprised to see how different she looked. Her face was focused and determined. Her hands were steady as she worked. This wasn't the nervous, worried woman he had known for the past 10 years. David, I've been hiding from life for too long. Emma said, her voice stronger than he had heard. It in years, your sister needs me at her wedding, and I need to prove to myself that I can do this. She stood up and walked to the counter, where a small black bag sat waiting. David watched as she opened it, revealing what looked like a tiny suitcase designed just for medications. Look at this, Emma said, her voice filled with excitement. She showed him her new travel kit, a small cooler with temperature control that would keep her insulin at the right temperature, a pill organizer with alarms that would beep to remind her when to take each medication, and copies of all her prescriptions, printed on special paper that wouldn't fade or tear. Margaret helped me order all of this online, Emma explained. And look at this. She pulled out her phone and showed David a new app. This translates medical terms into different languages. If I need help in Ireland, I can show this to any doctor or nurse. David picked up one of the prescription copies. He could see that his mother had spent time making sure everything was perfect. The papers were organized in a clear folder, with emergency contact numbers written in large, easy-to-read letters. I even have copies in both English and Irish. Emma continued. Well, not the Irish language, but with Irish medical terms that their doctors use. James from the support group helped me with that. He's been to Dublin 3 times. Emma pulled out a small white card from her wallet. Look, she said, holding it up like a treasure. This explains all my medications in simple terms. If anything happens, any doctor can understand what I need. David took the card and read it. His mother had written down each medication, what it was for, how much she took, and when she took it. At the bottom, she had added her blood type, her allergies, and Dr. Wilson's phone number. Mum. David said softly, "This is incredible. You've thought of everything." Emma smiled, and David saw something in her eyes that he hadn't seen for years. It wasn't just confidence. It was joy. His mother was actually excited about this trip. "I never thought I could do something like this," Emma said. "But Margaret showed me that traveling with medications isn't impossible. It just takes planning. And I'm good at planning." David thought about all the years his mother had organized family dinners, remembered everyone's birthdays, and kept track of every doctor's appointment. She had always been organized. She had just forgotten how strong she was. "I'm proud of you, Mom," David said, and he meant it. "You're braver than you know." Emma felt tears of joy in her eyes, but these weren't the scared tears she had cried so often. These were tears of happiness, of hope, of excitement for what was coming. She looked at her kitchen table, covered with the tools of her new adventure. Next week, she would be dancing at her daughter's wedding in Ireland. She was ready for this adventure. At the airport, Emma's heart was beating fast. But she felt prepared. She had arrived 2 hours early, just as Margaret had suggested. Her carry-on bag sat beside her at the check-in counter, carefully packed, with everything she needed. Medications, documents, and emergency contacts. She had practiced this moment many times in her mind. But now it was really happening. The check-in agent was a young woman with a friendly smile, flying to Dublin today. She asked cheerfully. "Yes," Emma replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "My daughter is getting married there. How wonderful. Congratulations. I see you've marked medical supplies on your form. That's perfect. Just make sure to keep those in your carry-on bag." Emma nodded. She had already planned to do exactly that. Her medications would stay with her every step of the journey. Walking through the airport, Emma felt different than she had expected. She had imagined feeling scared and out of place. Instead, she felt like she belonged here. Her small black medical bag rolled smoothly behind her regular suitcase. Other travelers smiled at her as they passed. She wasn't the only person traveling with special needs. At security, Emma took a deep breath. This was the moment she had worried about most. What if they didn't understand? What if they took her medications away? What if she couldn't explain what she needed? The security officer was a middle-aged man with kind eyes. "Ma'am, I see you have medical supplies. That's perfectly fine. We just need to check them quickly." Emma handed over her medication card, the one she had spent so much time preparing. The officer read it carefully, then looked at her organized supplies. Everything was clearly labeled, just as Margaret had taught her. "This is very well organized," the officer said with genuine appreciation. "It makes our job much easier when travelers are prepared like you are." Emma watched as they carefully screened her supplies. They handled each item with respect, explaining what they were doing as they worked. Everything went smoothly, just as Margaret had promised it would. "You're all set," the officer said, handing her bags back to her. "Have a wonderful trip." Emma almost cried with relief. The hardest part was over. On the plane, Emma found her seat and carefully stored her medical bag in the overhead compartment where she could reach it easily. She had chosen an aisle seat so she could get up if needed. Everything was going according to plan. The elderly gentleman sitting beside her looked nervous. His name tag read Robert, and he kept checking his jacket pocket every few minutes. "First time flying?" Emma asked gently. "First time flying with so many pills," Robert replied, his voice shaky. "I've never traveled with so many medications before. My wife usually handles all of this, but she's too sick to travel. I'm going to see our new grandchild." Emma felt her heart warm with understanding. Just a few weeks ago, she had been exactly where Robert was now. "I was terrified my first time too," Emma said softly, "but I learned some things that really helped." "Would you like me to share what I've learned?" Robert's face lit up with hope. "Would you really? I don't want to mess this up." Emma surprised herself by how confident she felt. She opened her bag and showed Robert her organized system. She explained how she had labeled everything, how she kept copies of her prescriptions, and how she had prepared for any emergency. "See this card," Emma said, showing him the white card from her wallet. "It explains everything in simple terms. Any doctor can understand it, even if they've never seen you before." Robert listened carefully, asking questions and taking notes on a small piece of paper. Emma found herself remembering all the tips Margaret and James had shared at the support group. She had learned so much in just a few weeks. You can take your medications on schedule, even with the time change. Emma explained, "I set my phone to remind me, and if you need water, just ask the flight attendant. They're very helpful." By the time the plane began its descent into Dublin, Robert was smiling. His shoulders were relaxed, and he had stopped checking his pocket every few minutes. "You've given me such peace of mind." "Thank you, Emma," Robert said as they prepared to land. "I was so worried about doing this alone." "You're not alone," Emma replied. "There are people like us everywhere. We just have to look out for each other." Emma stepped off the plane and breathed the cool Irish air. She realized something wonderful. She wasn't just managing her conditions anymore. She was helping others manage theirs too. Her fear had become her strength. Emma stood in her daughter's beautiful Irish garden, watching the wedding celebration unfold around her. The green hills rolled away into the distance, and fairy lights twinkled in the trees above the dancing guests. Her medications were organized in a room upstairs. Her health was stable, and her heart was full of joy. She had not only survived the trip, she had thrived. The wedding had been everything Sarah had dreamed of: the old stone church, the traditional Irish music, the laughter that seemed to echo across the countryside. Emma had danced with her new son-in-law, shared stories with his family, and felt more alive than she had in years. "Mom, I'm so proud of you for coming," Sarah whispered during their mother-daughter dance. "I know how scared you were, but you're here, and you're glowing." Emma felt tears of happiness on her cheeks. "I almost let fear keep me away from the most important day of your life. I'm so glad I didn't." The week in Ireland had been magical. Emma had taken her medications on schedule, eaten wonderful food, and even taken a tour of the Irish countryside. Her blood sugar had stayed stable, her heart had felt strong, and she had slept better than she had in months on the flight home. She sat next to a young woman who was traveling with asthma. Inhaler for the first time. Without hesitation, Emma shared what she had learned. It felt natural now, helping others who were where she used to be. 3 months later, Emma sat at her computer in her kitchen, typing her first blog post. The cursor blinked on the screen as she wrote, "Traveling with Medications, a Beginner's Guide." The support group had encouraged her to share her story, and Margaret had helped her set up the simple website. Emma wrote about her fears, her preparation, and her triumph. She included photos from Ireland, herself smiling at the airport, dancing at the wedding, and standing confidently with her organized medication kit. She wrote in simple words that anyone could understand, the same way Margaret had taught her. "I used to think my medications were chains that kept me prisoner," she typed. "Now I know they're just tools that help me live fully. The secret isn't being fearless. The secret is being prepared." She shared practical tips: how to organize, pills, what to pack, how to talk to airport security, and how to find help in foreign countries. But mostly, she shared hope. Her phone buzzed with a notification, a message from a stranger. "Emma, I read your blog. I'm taking my first flight next month with my diabetes medication. Your story gave me the courage to try. Thank you." Emma smiled and typed back immediately. "You can do this. I believe in you. Remember, preparation is your superpower." More messages followed. A grandmother who wanted to visit her grandchildren in Australia. A young man with heart medication who had been offered a job in another country. A woman with anxiety who dreamed of seeing Paris. Each person had found Emma's story and felt hope. Emma started answering every message. She shared Margaret's contact information for people who lived nearby. She recommended travel insurance companies that understood medical needs. She even helped people organize their first medication travel kits. Over video calls. Dr. Wilson had been right. Her conditions had not been a prison. They had been a classroom, teaching her strength she never knew she had, and now she was teaching others. Emma looked at her travel photos from Ireland, spread across her kitchen table. Sarah's wedding dress flowing in the Irish wind, the green hills that had looked so peaceful, just like in Dr. Wilson's office painting, her own face, confident and happy, in front of Dublin Castle. Then she looked at her passport. Sitting next to her computer, she had already started planning her next adventure. David had invited her to visit him in Scotland. Sarah and her new husband wanted to take a family trip to Italy next year. The world suddenly felt full of possibilities. Her phone rang. It was Margaret from the support group. "Emma, I have wonderful news." Margaret said. 3 new people joined our group this week. They all found us through your blog. They're all planning their first trips. Emma felt her heart swell with pride. "That's amazing. I'd love to meet them." "There's something else," Margaret continued. "The community center asked if you'd like to lead a workshop on travel preparation. They want to call it Emma's Adventure Club." Emma laughed with joy. "I'd love to do that." After hanging up, Emma sat quietly in her kitchen, surrounded by evidence of her new life. Her medication sat in their organized containers. No longer symbols of limitation, but tools of freedom. Life was just beginning. The end.